A very good morning to one and all. Today I am going to discuss about strategy, evaluation and control. And this is the last unit topic which is very important for you in strategic management for second year MBA fourth semester students. This strategic, but once the strategy implementation has been done, the priority which we have given for implementation, the same importance is there for strategy, evaluation, and control. Okay, so it is also very important for us. It is not that when once a strategy is being formulated, it is implemented according to it. We don't know whether and what way it has been implemented according to its our plans or not. So whatever the strategies that we have developed, whatever the strategies that we have trained, so according to that, the implementation is done or not. That is being evaluated. So that is called as strategy evaluation. Now let us see in detail what is, now you came to know the importance of strategy evaluation. Now let us see in detail about what is strategy evaluation. This is the two concepts that we are going to learn, the strategy evaluation and strategic control. So these are the two topics. Now let us see in detail what is a strategy evaluation. So this is the last part in the strategic management process, which is concerned with whether the strategy which has been implemented to identify whether that strategy is effective or not, whether it is effective or not. So the evaluation of the strategy is very important to find out its effectiveness. And at this evaluation stage, the organization evaluates if the implemented strategy has been successful in meeting the desired goals and objectives of the organization. So whatever the strategy that has been implemented, that has been successful, whether it has been made successful in meeting the goals and objectives of the organization or not, that is being evaluated by the organization. So in simple words, we can tell that strategic evaluation is defined as a process of measuring if the implemented strategy has successfully met the objectives of the organization and what kind of remedial actions need to be taken by the organization to address any shortcomings, So what that is telling me, it is a process of measuring the implemented strategy. So whatever the strategy that has been implemented, that implemented strategy is to be measured whether that implemented strategy has got successful and met the how can you tell the implemented strategy is successful? If the objectives and goals of the organization are met through that implemented strategy, you can tell that the implemented strategy is successful. So that is how you evaluate, and also you tell what kind of remedial actions need to be taken by the organization to address any shortcomings. Okay. So the role of strategist in an organization is to design a strategy that will help the organization to achieve its stated goals and objectives. So what are the strategist's role here? The strategist in the organization, he is to design a strategy which will help the organization to reach its organizational goals and objectives. And there needs to be a mechanism of checking if the strategy is successful in meeting the objectives which have been laid down by the organization, the organization. So this is done by strategic evaluation. This is done through strategic evaluation. I think you understood now. There needs to be a mechanism of checking if the strategy is successful in meeting the objectives which have been laid down by the organization is generally said as strategic evaluation. So thus, the strategic evaluation tries to play a major important role in the organization. So if the absence of this strategic evaluation in the organization will be totally clueless, will be totally clueless in evaluating the effectiveness of the implemented strategy. So it is that if you want, if you already you have implemented a strategy and you want to evaluate what is the effectiveness of that implemented strategy. So if you don't evaluate, if this strategic evaluation is absent, you do not know how you have, what is the effectiveness of the strategy which you have been implemented. Okay, so that it is that this strategic evaluation tends to overlook the short-term factors. It used to overlook the short-term factors which may impact the operational effectiveness of the organization and also focuses on the trends which will determine whether the success or failure of the organization. It is that this process of strategy evaluation, it needs a great deal of coordination. So it requires a great deal of coordination between the managers, between the groups, between the departments of the organization. So this strategic evaluation is important because it can be the basis for the future strategy definition. So, for example, if you have implemented a strategy and if you don't know, if you don't identify the evaluation process, you can in future you don't know how you have to develop a strategy, right? So this strategic evaluation will act as a basis for future framing of the strategies. In future, how you have to frame the strategies. So it will be the basis for those will be the strategic evaluation. So if you want to define a future strategy, if you want to define, if you want to frame some rewards and incentive system, or if you want to have the whole strategic management exercises in the organization, for everything, the basis is strategy evaluation. The basis is strategy evaluation. Now let us see the definition of strategic evaluation. According to Bloom and Young, evaluation of strategy is the phase of strategic management process in which the top managers use to determine whether the strategic choice as implemented in meeting the objectives of the exercise. So what they said according to Luke and Jonah, so this evaluation of strategy is the phase in strategic management process and this used to determine. So to meet the objectives of the organization, you have implemented certain strategic choice. So whether that choice, strategic choice which you have chose and implemented, so that strategy has fulfilled or met the organizational objectives or not. That will be said through this strategic management. That will be said through this strategic evaluation in the strategic management. I think we understood about what is strategy evaluation. And the next one is strategic control. It deals with monitoring the strategy after it has been executed in the organization. So when once it has the monitoring, it came with monitoring the strategy. When once strategy has been executed in the organization, implementation. Strategic control mainly deals with monitoring the strategy. Monitoring the strategy. So when once the progress is going to be executed, you will come to monitor. So that monitoring is said to be strategic control. It involves taking stock of the strategy. Strategic control involves taking stock of the strategy and making any necessary corrections or clearing out any problems which has been seen in the implementation stage. So when you are implementing a strategy, you need to monitor whether you require any necessary correction or you require any if there arises any clear cut clearing out any problems while you have seen in the implementation stage. So according to the authors and Nieman and Logon, they have used the term steering control. They have used the term as steering control for this strategic control. It is that to point out what the steering control do. It used to point out certain critical aspects of a strategic control. Critical aspects of strategic control. Normally, a significant amount of time used to elapse between the initial execution of the strategy as well as the final result. As well as the final result. Uh, the strategy is also impacted by the events in the external environment of the organization. So this strategy it shows more impact on the external activities of the based on the external environment of the organization. So in this scenario, the organization needs this steering control. It used to need this steering control, which used to guide the organization through a critical aspect of implementation. It used to guide through a critical aspect of implementation. So that the organizations need to have a mechanism for correcting any shortcomings in the implementation of the strategy. So while you are implementing a strategy, if this steering control is there, the organization will have it will have a mechanism of requiring any corrections in the strategy or any shortcomings that has been need to be knowing on. So this strategic control provides the organization the ability to monitor the progress of the strategy. So what is the progress while you are implementing this strategy? So that will be monitored through this strategic control and also to identify some flaws and to take the necessary corrections while you are implementing the strategy. While you are implementing the strategy. That is, while the data is being pertaining to the implementation, it used to play a very important role. To play a very important role and also becomes to become a part of this. So the data is being collected and then compared to the pre-designed standards. So how the data is being here, the data will be collected and also it is compared to some predefined standards. So that if any major deviation has been identified in the performance of implementation, at that time, the data that has been collected for this purpose is to be has to be a significant quantity. Has to be a significant quantity, so that the analysis of the data can yield logical actions for the organization. It has to lead the logical actions for the organization. So, this strategic controls are by and large subjective. They are by and large subjective in nature, and I use it to see if the firm is using the correct strategy to take advantage of its opportunities in the external environment. In the external environment. Also, this strategic control, it aims to create a balance between what the firm might do, that is as followed from the opportunities of the firm's external environment, and also what the firm can do, what the firm might do, and what the firm can do, that is from its competitive advantage. Okay, so it is this strategic control is used to measure the extent to which the organization relies on the requirement of the execution of the strategy. So how this will be relayed is it depends upon the requirements of the execution of the strategy. Okay. So I hope you understood this. What is the strategic control? And in this we have several types of strategic control. Several types of strategic control. So this strategic control is considered similar to the steering control. We have already, according to Neiman and Logan, they said this strategic control is linked is said to be as a steering control, right? So since there are lots of time elapses between the execution of strategy as well as the results that occur to the organization. So this strategic control guides the organization through the phase between implementation of the strategy and the actual results what have been happening. Implementation of the strategy and the results of what happened. So they form the basis for the organization's strategic actions and reactions to the changes which takes place in its external environment, which is to take place in its external environment. So this strategic control has put the place by the organization in various types. So these are some of the types of strategic control. Permissive control, implementation control, strategic surveillance, special alert control, financial control, output and behavior control. So these are the several types of strategic control. Now let us see in detail about these types. The first one is premise control. That is when there is an assumption of a planning process and these are being set up at the first stage of strategic planning. So when this premise control has been done, when the assumptions of the planning process are set up in the first stage of strategic planning, this premise control tries to examine if the assumptions which were made in the initial stage of strategic planning exercise which are good, which hold good or not, which hold good or not. So premise control is mainly based on two kinds of factors. That is, one is environmental factors and the other one is industry factors. That is, while you are planning a strategy, you will make some assumptions, right? That assumptions hold good or not will be set to this premise control. And in this, we have two kinds. One is environmental factors and the other one is industry factors. The environmental factors include based on inflation, GDP growth rate, or technology factors, or some other demographic or social changes. So this is the major factor which which implements this precise control, and the other one is industry factors. So these industry factors include competitors, suppliers, substitutes of the company products, and the existing barriers to entry and exit. So the same this is about the industry factors. The same level of control is not required for all these factors. So it is not that for all these factors the same level is being required. So the manager that he can decide which factors are likely to change and what is the impact of these factors on the company and its strategy on the company. It is not that optimized control involves environmental and industry factors. So based on the factors which are likely to change and based upon the factors on the company and its strategy, this optimized control means these factors need to be developed. And the next one is implementation control. Strategic implementation provides the organization with the information regarding its overall strategy. The overall strategy. That is, this implementation control is that aspect of strategic control which tries to oversee the governance of overall decided overall decided strategy in accordance with the decided principles. In accordance with the decided principles. So that it just to examine if the strategy needs to be changed in light of the events which happen in the organizational external environment. So according to the organization's external environment, it used to decide the strategies and you need to decide the principles. You need to decide the principles, right? So this strategic implementation is totally distinct from day-to-day operations. These are distinct from the day-to-day operations, and also the organization has operations control that the organization has to place. And also this control used to examine the strategy of the organization on a continuous basis. It is not that one time basis. It is of a continuous basis. It is of a continuous basis. Okay. And the other one is strategic surveillance. This is the third type of strategic control is strategic surveillance. In this, the organization used to keep track of a set of critical events or some activities both within and outside the organization. Both within and outside the organization. So these are very critical to the success of a strategy. These are very critical to the success of the strategy. So the idea behind strategic surveillance is to encourage the general data gathering and analysis of a set of critical activities, so that the organization will not be surprised by sudden occurrences in the environment. That is, it used to tell before itself that, about how the data will be gathered and analysis of the set of critical actions, how it is going to be there in future, so that you don't get a sudden occurrences in the environment, so that the organization will be prepared for the future and not prone to the events and not prone to the events which occur and take it by surprise, So in the way the strategic surveillance is similar to the environmental scanning aspect of the strategy. So the main difference here lies in the coverage. Strategic surveillance mainly has a difference which lies in the coverage. That is, while environmental scanning is concerned with all the events which occur in respect of the strategic planning exercise of the organization, which is done on a periodic basis. Now you seem to know that what may be the difference between strategic surveillance and external scanning. Also, the difference lies mainly in the coverage. That is, while the environmental scanning is mainly concerned with all the events which occur in respect to the strategic planning exercises of the organization, which is done on a periodic basis. Which is done on a periodic basis. So that the strategic surveillance concerns itself with all the events. It used to concern itself with all the events which can impact the overall strategy of the organization. This used to impact the overall strategy of the organization. And the next one is special alert control. So the special alert control, it used to define the rapid response and evaluation of the existing strategy. Evaluation of the existing strategy of the organization in the face of unplanned events and drastic events. Unplanned events and drastic events, and this used to take place in the firm's environment. This used to take place in the firm's environment. So that the organization implements a special alert control by implementing the contingency plan. By implementing the contingency plans and initiating the specific roles and responsibilities in the organization to handle sudden events in the environment. This special alert control can also be considered as crisis management. You can call it as a crisis management. For example, there is a natural uh, catastrophe like earthquake which has been dropped in the previous places, right? Right, in 2015 it has been in Nepal, right? So, in which the government of India has reacted by sending the National Disaster Relief Force to Nepal. Relief Force to Nepal, right? So, these are some of the examples, right? And the other one is financial control. The organization also put into a place the financial controls to monitor the progress of the strategy. It is to monitor the progress of the strategy. That these controls are in the form of performance of the organization against setting of some standards. The best examples of this financial controls are financial measures or a return on equity. ROE, we call it as some finance students used to read these financial measures, return on equity, return on net worth, RONW, return on net worth, and return on assets, ROA, return on assets. So when the firm tries to adapt diversification strategy, then the strategic controls are very difficult to implement. The strategic controls are very difficult to implement. So in this case, the organization uses financial controls to measure the output of the organization which has been against the predefined standards. Which have been against the predefined standards. So they are also used by the organization to compare the performance of various business units as well as business managers, strategic business units as well as the business managers they used to compare. And then the financial controls allows the organization to compare what are the parameters with the previous, what are the financial parameters with the previous year, as well as what are the benchmark with the figures of the competitors of the organization. Competitors of the organization. Why you do all these things? Is to see the relative performance of the organization. To identify or to look at the relative performance of the organization, generally we use to. The global economy has allowed the organizational access to the sophisticated technology, and it allows the organization to initiate the financial control successfully. To initiate the financial control successfully. For example, a type of software is sold by Oracle and SAP, which the firms can use to implement their financial controls. So this is just an example. So this software has been developed by these companies in accordance with Sarbanes-Oxley Act. According to Sarbanes-Oxley Act, they used to implement their financial control, right? And the next type of strategic control is output control. In this strategic control, the strategic manager used to set a target for the performance of each division, each department, or each employee of the organization, and then used to compare the actual performance against the set standards, against the set standards. So, what are these set standards? That these used to set goals against the individual employee, department, or division, or these are being measured. And these standards also set the basis on which the employee can be measured, on which the employee can be measured. So these standards set the basis on which the organization can set the reward schemes as well as the incentive schemes which based upon the motivate performance in the organization. So based upon the performance of the organization, we used to use the incentives or rewards. Okay. So the output control used to flow from the divisional level to the functional level and also to finally to the individual level. Finally to the individual level. So the divisional managers of the organization, they used to set a goals and performance targets to the functional managers. And next, these goals are set in such a manner that the organization can attain the competitive advantage in the marketplace. And later on, the managers are continuously utilizing the output control for strategic implementation in the organization. The first step here is to choose the goal and target. This is the first step to choose the goals and targets, which are being absolutely critical for the organization in terms of quality, in terms of what we call efficiency, in terms of innovation, and in terms of also customer centricity. Customer centricity. So after this, they used to measure what are the actual output against setting of the goals. Against setting of the goals. So this is done at corporate level, functional level, divisional level, as well as the individual level also. Individual level. So finally, the output of the organization is measured with financial, organizational, and operations budget. And operations budget. And the last one is behavior control. This tries to visualize the adaptation of it's trying to visualize the adoption of strict system of rules and regulations that used to control the behavior of divisions, functions, as well as individuals in a particular way. In a particular way. Here, the controls are being established in such a way that though the goals are not specified, but the way of achieving them is set as a norm. Is set as a norm. So that employees are encouraged to get the results for the organization, but within the boundaries of the rules and regulations which have been set. In the boundaries of the rules and regulations. So the employees become very much predictable and their efforts are accurate. And their efforts are accurate and easy for the organization to measure also. Easy for the organization to measure also. So the best way of enforcing this type of control is through operations budget. Operations budget. Here, the standardization and defining of rules and procedures also helps in controlling the behavior of the organization. So that is about various types of organizational types of strategic control. Now let us see how do you establish this strategic control. Strategic control is established in the following manner. The first one is used to determine what to control. Used to determine what to control. That is, the first thing here is to be decided on what are the activities that the organization wants to keep track. What are the activities that the organization wants to keep track of and control. That is being done in the first one, that is determining what to control. These are generally normally decided based upon the objectives, based upon the vision, mission, and goal settings which are being done in the as the result of planning. As the result of planning. So it is necessary for the managers to decide what they must control. Why? Because it is not possible to monitor and control every activity. So all the activities will not be monitored. So the activities which are being monitored are based on are being decided based on the objectives, vision and mission and the goal setting of the organization which has been resulted in the planning stage. Okay. So the process of strategic control used to communicate clearly and also to the rest of the organization why the controls are being put in place, why the controls are being put in place. That is being determined in the first one. And next one, set control standards. When once the organization has been decided what it wants to control, the next step is to set some standards for each of these. Set some standards for each of these. So the standards here are nothing but targets. Standards in the sense here, targets. So the targets against which the actual performance can be measured to judge if the performance is up to the mark or not. If the performance is up to the mark or not. Okay, and standards in the sense it used to represent as a benchmark also. Benchmarking. That is, it used to compare with measuring with the current performance and used to define the future targets. Future targets. Also, it used to evaluate with the historical performances also. Historical performances. And the next one is measure performance. Measure performance. So the next step is to actually measure the output or performance. Output or the performance and compare against the standards. Used to compare against the standards. And here the measurement to differ from one case to another. It is not that defining all the activities into one measurement. In some cases, it would be a normal observation, some in events, whereas in another it may be involved of a detailed analysis. Involved of a detailed analysis. Okay, so that is about measure performance. And the next one, compare performance to standards. Compare performance to standards. So next, the actual performance is being compared to the standard set. The actual performance is to be compared to the standard set. That is, if earlier stages are done properly and the actual performance of the actual comparison of the performance as well as the standards is a very easy process. If there is some problem, especially in if the standards used to pertain to the behavioral aspects, so the measurement of these cases often be impacted by extraneous variables which are beyond the control of the organization. And the next one, determine the results from for the deviation. That is, when once the divergence is seen in the actual performance and the standard performance, the next step for us is to understand why the divergence has been caused. Why the divergence has been caused. The organization needs to examine if there are any shortfalls in achievement. It may be, that is, it must be of benign shortcomings. It must be of benign shortcomings in the internal factors of the organization, or because of the external events which are not possible for the organization to control. And you need to remember that the standards in line are the standards in line with the organizational objectives and strategies or not. That is being determined. And also, are the objectives that have been decided are realistic, and they have given the external environment of the organization or not. So these have to be determined. And the last one is take corrective action. This is the last step in the process, is to initiate a remedial action. So the managers must do one of the things, that they should do nothing, or they should rectify the actual performance, or they should change the standard. They should change the standard. That is, making no change is advisable when no significant deviation has been seen. So if you see that there is no significant deviation has been seen between the actual performance and the standard, then it is advisable to have no change. And when the deviations are significant, then the manager needs to decide the course of action, on the course of action. And the remedial action is dependent on what kind of deviations are seen and what kind of autonomy the managers have to take of remedial actions, have to take on the remedial action. So the deviations could be because of many reasons. The deviations may be due to many reasons. Why? Because it could be because of some faulty designing of the strategy, or implementing wrongly, or implementing wrong. So each of these requires a different action plan by the organization. By the organization. Okay. With this, we'll stop today's session. Huh? If you have any queries, you can ask me. All right. Thank you.